Immigration and Customs
Nobody
Enforcement!
move!
Where's the owner of this facility?
Lower your voice! There are children sleeping in here! What are you doing?
We're conducting a workplace raid. I need to see documentation for all your employees. Are you the owner?
I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and I own
You
this
just woke up
facility.
15 terrified children. Get out.
Do not re-enter that room. Those children are traumatized. I'm blocking this door until you leave my facility.
Ma'am, we have authority to inspect this workplace. You're obstructing a federal investigation.
This isn't a workplace, it's a child care facility.
The children are sleeping. 15 toddlers on their colorful mats, arranged in neat rows across the carpeted floor of the naptime room. The lights are dimmed. White noise machines hum softly in the corners. A 3-year-old named Marcus clutches his stuffed elephant. 4-year-old Amelia has her thumb in her mouth, curled on her side. 2-year-old Jaden sprawls like a starfish, completely surrendered to sleep. The woman sitting in the rocking chair near the door watches them with the practiced vigilance of someone who's done this 1,000 times. She's reviewing notes on her tablet, preparing for the afternoon's activities. Story time at 3, outdoor play at 3:30, parent pickup starting at 4. It's 2:47 on a Wednesday afternoon in Oakland, and Little Star's Child Development Center is in the middle of its daily naptime routine. Everything is peaceful. Everything is safe. Everything is exactly as it should be, until the front door crashes open. The sound is violent in the quiet building. Not a knock. Not a request for entry. The crash of a door kicked open, the bang of it hitting the wall, the sudden thunder of boots on hardwood floors. The woman in the rocking chair jumps to her feet, heart pounding. Several children startle awake immediately, confused and frightened. Marcus starts crying. Amelia sits up, disoriented. The woman moves quickly but quietly to the naptime room door, pulling it mostly closed to shield the children from whatever's happening. Through the gap, she sees them. 4 federal agents in tactical vests storming through her facility, spreading out through rooms like they're executing a drug raid. One of them spots her through the door gap. "You, step out here, now." The woman's training kicks in. She's a child psychologist. She has a PhD in developmental psychology. She spent 15 years studying childhood trauma. And she knows exactly what's about to happen if these agents don't lower their voices and leave immediately. If you believe children deserve protection from trauma, hit subscribe. Because what IC Agent Marcus Webb and his team did to those 15 sleeping toddlers, and what they did to Dr. Sarah Mitchell in front of her students, will prove exactly why some violations cost more than money. They cost innocence. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was 41 years old, owner and director of Little Star's Child Development Center for 8 years. The daycare served 45 children, ages 2 to 5, with 15 staff members. Sarah wasn't just the owner. She was a practicing child psychologist who designed the entire center around trauma-informed care principles. Every detail, from the soft lighting to the quiet spaces to the gentle transition routines, was built on her expertise in child development and her specialty in helping children who'd experienced trauma. She'd earned her doctorate from UC Berkeley, written her dissertation on the impacts of witnessing authority figures in conflict on early childhood development, published 12 peer-reviewed papers, and consulted with school districts across California on creating safe learning environments. Little Stars wasn't just a daycare. It was a model program, a place where Sarah put her research into practice, where children with behavioral challenges flourished, where parents who couldn't afford traditional therapy found support through Sarah's sliding scale psychological services. She'd been featured in early childhood education journals. She'd presented at conferences. She'd built something that mattered. And at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, 4 federal agents kicked in her door because someone had called in an anonymous tip claiming she was employing undocumented workers. Agent Marcus Webb led the team. His partners, Agents Jennifer Torres, David Kim, and Lisa Rodriguez, fanned out through the building. They had no warrant. They had an anonymous tip that provided no names, no specifics, just a claim that a daycare on 14th Street might be employing illegal immigrants. They'd driven to Little Stars, seen the name matched the vague address from the tip, and decided that was sufficient to conduct a raid. They never called, never verified, never considered that storming a building full of sleeping children might not be appropriate tactical procedure. Sarah stepped into the hallway, pulling the naptime room door closed behind her. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I own this facility. What are you doing here?" "Immigration and Customs Enforcement," Webb said loudly, his voice carrying through the building. "We're conducting a workplace enforcement operation. We need to see documentation for all your employees." "You need to lower your voice," Sarah said immediately, her psychologist training overriding her fear. "There are 15 children sleeping in that room. You've already woken several of them. You're causing distress." "We don't answer to you," Webb replied, not lowering his voice at all. "Where are your employees? Who's working today?" Sarah felt her heart rate spike but kept her voice controlled. "I have 4 employees present. They're all U.S. citizens or legal residents. All their documentation was verified during hiring. I'm happy to provide everything you need, but you need to lower your voices and conduct this in a way that doesn't traumatize children." Behind the naptime room door, more crying started. Marcus was wailing now, fully awake and scared. Amelia was calling for Miss Sarah. Other children were stirring, confused by the loud voices, the heavy boots, the tension they could feel even in their sleepy state. "One of your employees is Guatemalan," Torres said, reading from a sheet. "Maria Santos. Where is she?" "Maria is a U.S. permanent resident," Sarah replied. "She's been legal for 12 years. She's in the infant room with 3 babies. And I need you to understand, these children can hear you. Your volume and aggression are causing psychological harm right now. Show us her papers," Webb demanded. "And everyone else's. Now." Sarah's hands were shaking but her voice stayed steady. "I will provide all documentation. But first, I need to attend to the children you've just terrorized. They're waking up frightened and confused. I need to calm them before this escalates into a full crisis. You're not going anywhere until we verify your employees," Kim said, positioning himself between Sarah and the naptime room door. The crying was getting louder now. Multiple children awake, scared, calling out. Through the naptime room door, Sarah could see little faces. Amelia standing now, tears streaming, Marcus clutching his elephant and sobbing. "Get Miss Sarah." Amelia was crying. "I want Miss Sarah. You're making this worse," Sarah said, her professional training warring with her rising panic. "I'm a child psychologist. I'm telling you as an expert, you need to let me calm these children right now or you're going to cause trauma that requires therapeutic intervention." "We're conducting a federal investigation," Rodriguez said. "The children can wait." That was when Sarah made her decision. "No, they can't. I'm going to them. Now." She moved toward the naptime room door. Webb grabbed her arm. "You're not moving until we say you can." The physical contact was witnessed by everyone. Sarah's assistant director, 26-year-old Marcus Chen, had emerged from the toddler room at the sound of the commotion. He pulled out his phone immediately and started recording. "Hey, he's grabbing her." Marcus's voice carried through the building. The infant room door opened. Maria Santos, a 43-year-old Guatemalan-American woman who'd been a permanent resident for 12 years, stepped out holding a 6-month-old baby. When she saw the agents, she froze. The terror on her face was immediate and visceral. Even though she was legal, even though her papers were perfect, the sight of those vests triggered trauma from her journey to America decades ago. The baby in her arms started crying, picking up on Maria's fear. The infant room had 2 other babies. They started crying too. In the naptime room, all 15 toddlers were now awake. Some were crying. Some were silent with wide, frightened eyes. Some were calling for their parents. The assistant in the naptime room, 22-year-old Jessica Williams, was trying to comfort them. But her own fear was visible. Children are incredibly perceptive. They can sense adult stress. They can feel when something is wrong. And right now, everything in their safe space was screaming danger. Sarah twisted her arm free from Webb's grip. "You just assaulted me in front of witnesses," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "And you're causing a mass trauma event in a room full of children." "I'm documenting everything," Marcus said from down the hall, phone still recording. "All of you, badge numbers, everything." "Ma'am, put the phone down," Torres ordered. I'm within my rights to record federal agents conducting an operation, Marcus replied. I'm not interfering. I'm documenting. The front door opened. A parent, Keisha Thompson, an attorney arriving early for pickup, walked in and stopped dead at the scene. 4 federal agents in tactical vests. Her child's director with a red mark on her arm where she'd been grabbed. Children crying from multiple rooms. What the hell is happening here? Keisha's voice was sharp. Lawyer instincts immediately engaged. Ice raid, Marcus said, still recording. They kicked the door in during nap time. They grabbed Dr. Mitchell. The babies and toddlers are all awake and traumatized. Keisha pulled out her own phone, started recording from a different angle. I'm an attorney. This is a licensed childcare facility. Do you have a warrant? We don't need a warrant for workplace enforcement, Webb said. But his certainty was starting to crack. This isn't a workplace. This is a childcare facility with children present. Different rules apply. Where's your warrant? Sarah used the momentary distraction to move to the naptime room door. She knelt to the children's level, speaking in the calm, warm voice she used for frightened kids. Hi friends. I know that was scary. Those are police officers doing their job, but everything's okay. Let's all take some deep breaths together. Okay? But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Everything was not okay. These children were not okay. Their safe space had been violated by armed agents who'd kicked in the door and grabbed their teacher. Marcus, still clutching his elephant, looked at her with huge, terrified eyes. Are the bad men going to take you? The question broke Sarah's heart. No, sweetie. Nobody's taking me anywhere. I'm right here. But she wasn't sure that was true. Webb was behind her now, his patience gone. Ma'am, step away from the children. We need to see your identification and proof of citizenship. I'm a U.S. citizen born in Oakland, Sarah said without turning around, still focused on the children. My driver's license is in my purse in my office. My birth certificate is in my filing cabinet. You're welcome to see all of it after I've calmed these children. You're coming with us now, Webb said, reaching for her again. Keisha stepped between them, phone still recording. Don't touch her. You've already assaulted her once. You want to do it again in front of a lawyer and 15 witnesses? A second parent walked through the still open front door. Michael Rodriguez, a journalist who'd come to pick up his daughter Sophia. He took in the scene with a reporter's eye and immediately started recording. What's your name and badge number? Michael asked Webb. Who authorized this raid? Are you aware you've entered a licensed childcare facility without a warrant? More parents were arriving now. 4 o'clock pickup was approaching. They walked into chaos. Crying children, federal agents, their children's teachers being questioned. Phones recording from multiple angles. The parking lot was filling with cars as word spread. Parent called the local news. Another called the licensing board. A third called a child advocacy organization. In the naptime room, Jessica was trying to get the children to lie back down. But they were too scared. They wanted their parents. They wanted Miss Sarah. They wanted the loud men to leave. Several had wet themselves. Accidents from fear, something Sarah knew would happen. This was a textbook trauma response. In the infant room, all 3 babies were screaming now, Maria trying to comfort them while shaking herself. Her papers clutched in her hand even though nobody had asked for them yet. The toddler room had 8 children who were supposed to be doing afternoon art projects. They were all pressed against the door, watching through the window, frightened by the adults in tactical vests. Sarah stood up slowly, turned to face Webb. I'm going to say this once more. You've violated every protocol for interacting with children. You've created a mass trauma event. You've assaulted me. And you're being recorded from 8 different angles by attorneys, journalists, and parents. If you have questions about my employees' documentation, I will provide everything in my office. If you have questions about my citizenship, my identification is available. But you need to leave this building in the next 5 minutes or I'm calling 911 and reporting a break-in and assault. You called 911? You're going to report federal agents to local police? Torres asked incredulously. I'm reporting armed intruders who kicked in my door and grabbed me in front of children. Sarah corrected. The fact that you have badges doesn't give you the right to traumatize toddlers. The Oakland police arrived 12 minutes later, called by 3 separate parents who reported a violent break-in at a daycare. Officers Maria Santos and David Park entered cautiously, hands near weapons, not sure what they were walking into. The scene was pandemonium. Crying children, crying babies, frightened parents, federal agents in tactical vests, and multiple people recording everything. "What's the situation here?" Officer Park asked. "ICE raid on a daycare," Keisha answered immediately, her lawyer voice clear and authoritative. "No warrant. They kicked the door in during nap time. They assaulted the director. 30 children traumatized. 8 witnesses recording. We've already filed complaints with the licensing board and Child Protective Services." Officer Park looked at Webb. "Is this accurate?" "We're conducting workplace immigration enforcement," Webb said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Do you have a warrant?" Park asked. "We don't need one for workplace checks. This is a licensed childcare facility with children present," Park said. "You absolutely needed a warrant. Did you contact the facility before entering?" "No." "Did you verify the children would be safe during your operation?" "No." "Did you use force to enter?" "The door's broken off its hinges." "So you conducted a forcible warrantless entry into a childcare facility, used aggressive tactics that frightened 30 children, and physically grabbed a caregiver in front of those children. Do I have that right?" The silence from Webb was answer enough. Officer Park turned to Sarah. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges for assault and breaking and entering?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "And I want every one of these agents' badge numbers for the licensing complaint and the lawsuit I'm filing." The ICE agents left at 4:47 p.m., 2 hours after they'd crashed through the door. No arrests made. No documentation violations found. Every employee was exactly as legal as Sarah had said. They left behind a broken door, 15 traumatized toddlers, 3 screaming infants, 8 frightened preschoolers, 20 hysterical parents, and 1 child psychologist whose expertise had just proven devastatingly relevant to her own life. The licensing inspector arrived at 5:30 p.m., conducting an emergency review. Sarah walked her through everything: the broken door, the children's reactions, the assault, the lack of warrant. The inspector's face was grim. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm required to file a report on this incident. But I want to be clear, you did nothing wrong. Your facility's in compliance. Your staff are all properly documented. What happened here was a violation of your rights and those children's well-being. I'll be recommending that Child Protective Services investigate the agents, not your facility." The story broke on local news at 6 p.m. The footage from 8 different phones had already spread across social media. Parents were giving interviews about picking up their traumatized children. Child development experts were being interviewed about the impact of witnessing authority violence on young children. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Dr. Sarah Mitchell and Little Stars Child Development Center versus United States, Marcus Webb, Jennifer Torres, David Kim, and Lisa Rodriguez. The complaint was extraordinary. Federal civil rights violations, assault, breaking and entering, intentional infliction of emotional distress on 30 children, violation of state childcare regulations, creating a hostile environment for children, professional defamation, and something unusual, a claim under state Child Protective Services statutes that the agents had engaged in child endangerment. The evidence was overwhelming. 8 phone videos from different angles, daycare security footage, the broken door, medical records showing 5 children had required therapy for nightmares and regression behaviors, expert testimony from child psychologists about the impacts of witnessing authority violence, and Sarah's own credentials, a PhD in developmental psychology, 15 years studying childhood trauma, published research on this exact scenario. She was the expert witness on her own case, able to explain in precise clinical terms exactly what the agents had done to those children and why it would affect them for years. The trial was held 14 months later. The courtroom was packed daily with early childhood educators, child advocates, parents from Little Stars, and media covering every moment. The jury watched all 8 videos. They heard the crash of the door. They heard children crying. They heard Sarah's calm attempts to de-escalate. They saw Webb grab her arm. They saw the terror on Maria's face. They saw parents arriving to find their children traumatized. Sarah testified for 2 full days. She walked the jury through her research, her training, her expertise. Then she walked them through that afternoon, describing in clinical terms what had happened psychologically to each child in that building. Marcus, age 3, has required 6 months of play therapy for nightmares about bad men taking Miss Sarah. Amelia, age 4, regressed to bedwetting and refused to attend daycare for 2 weeks. Jaden, age 2, became hypervigilant around any men in uniforms, including mail carriers and delivery drivers. 5 of the 15 children in that naptime room now show symptoms of post-traumatic stress. The 3 infants in Maria's room showed disrupted attachment behaviors for weeks. This is what happens when you kick in a door on sleeping children. The parents testified. Keisha Thompson, the attorney, described arriving to find armed agents surrounding her child's teacher. Michael Rodriguez, the journalist, explained trying to comfort his daughter Sophia, who'd asked if Miss Sarah was going to jail. Other parents described behavior changes, clinginess, nightmares, fear of authority figures, regression in toilet training. Child development experts testified about the research on children witnessing authority violence, about how this kind of trauma impacts brain development, about why daycares need to be treated differently than other workplaces. The state licensing inspector testified about the violations, about how the agents had created exactly the kind of environment that regulations were designed to prevent. The defense tried to argue the agents had followed procedure for workplace enforcement. But the prosecution destroyed it with Sarah's own expertise. Dr. Mitchell, you've published research on this exact scenario. What does your research show? My research shows that children who witness authority figures using force against their caregivers experience measurable trauma. Their cortisol levels spike. Their sense of safety is shattered. The daycare, which should be a secure attachment space, becomes associated with danger. These children will carry this for years. Even children as young as 6 months old, those infants in Maria's room, will have disrupted attachment patterns because they felt her fear. The jury deliberated 9 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The damages phase took 3 more days. Compensation for Sarah's trauma. Compensation for each of the 30 children, therapy costs, emotional damages. Compensation for the parents' distress. Compensation for Maria's re-traumatization. Compensation for the business losses while Little Stars was closed for repairs and parents found alternate care. Then punitive damages. The jury wanted to send a message. You don't raid daycares. You don't kick in doors on sleeping children. You don't grab child psychologists in front of toddlers. The damages, $18.9 million total. $4.2 million compensatory, split among Sarah, the children's families, and Little Stars. $14.7 million punitive, calculated to make every federal agent think twice before storming a childcare facility. All 4 agents were terminated. The licensing board formally barred them from ever working in any capacity with children. Child Protective Services filed formal findings of child endangerment against each agent. New federal regulations were implemented requiring that any enforcement action at a licensed childcare facility must have a warrant, must be coordinated with state licensing, must occur outside of children's presence, and must include a child welfare professional on site. Little Stars reopened 6 weeks after the raid. Some parents had pulled their children, too frightened to return. But most stayed, trusting Sarah, understanding that what happened wasn't her fault. She used part of the settlement to add trauma-informed security features. Cameras everywhere, panic buttons in every room, reinforced doors that couldn't be kicked in, and a full-time security consultant. She also established a fund for other childcare providers who faced immigration raids, providing legal support and therapeutic resources for affected children. She became an advocate for childcare protection legislation, testifying before state legislatures about why daycares needed special protections. Years later, asked if the settlement felt like justice, Sarah's answer was clinical. The money funded therapy for the children and protection for other facilities. The terminations meant those specific agents can't do this again. But justice would have been those agents calling first, conducting their investigation without children present, treating a childcare facility with the care it deserves. What we got was accountability after trauma. It's better than nothing. But 30 children still carry what happened that Wednesday afternoon. The 8 phone videos are still online, used in law enforcement training, shown in early childhood education programs. They show exactly what happens when enforcement procedures ignore child welfare, when agents treat a daycare like a drug house, when assumption overrides expertise. For agents saw a daycare that might employ undocumented workers and decided force was appropriate. 30 children paid the price. One child psychologist proved that her expertise wasn't just theoretical, it was heartbreakingly relevant. And a jury decided that naptime is sacred. Should federal agents face automatic child endangerment charges for conducting raids in childcare facilities? Comment below. Because what happened at Little Stars wasn't just a civil rights violation. It was a mass trauma event inflicted on the most vulnerable people in that building. The ones who couldn't understand why the loud men kicked in the door, couldn't process why Miss Sarah looked scared, couldn't articulate the fear that would live in their bodies for years. If you believe children deserve protection from authority violence, subscribe. Tomorrow we cover another case where someone's procedures met someone's expertise and lost expensively.